A family of 6 and 2 of their guests were hacked to death with an axe in their own home. And that home is now referred to as the Villisca Ax Murder House. The Vilisca Ax Murder House is always voted one of the most haunted attractions in the United States. But what makes this house so haunted? What happened? What's the story behind it? The Moore family lived in this home. And the Moore family consisted of Josiah the father, Sarah the mother, their 4 children, Herman, Mary Catherine, Arthur Boyd, and Paul Vernon. On June 9th of 1912, the family attended church where they usually go. The children participated in the Children's Day program at the church, and Sarah was actually the one coordinating it. Because they had this program that ended at 9:30 p.m. at night, they invited 2 girls over their house to stay. Ina May, who was 8, and Lena Gertrude Singer, who was 12, to spend the night after the program. So at 9:30 p.m., they all walked back together to the Moore's house. Fast forward to the morning of June 10th. The Moore's neighbor, Mary Peckham, noticed that they weren't outside doing their morning chores. Now, at first when I read this, I was like, why is the neighbor all up in their business? Why is she like staring at the kids to see if they're doing their chores in the morning? Like, is she the nanny? Is she the grandma? She's the neighbor. Who does that? But also remember, this is the 1910s, so there was probably like nothing else to do really. Also, it said that Mary Peckham had to let the chickens out for them, so that was probably the chore. She noticed that the chickens weren't outside doing their clucking. So being a good neighbor that Mary Peckham is, she decided to go and check on the Moores. She went to the Moore's house, knocked on the door, but heard nothing. She even tried the handle, but the door was locked. So luckily, Miss Mary had the number of Josiah the father's brother, Ross. She called Ross and was like, hey, the Moores aren't outside doing their daily chores, feeding the chickens, cleaning the chicken coop. We gotta check up on them and make sure that they're okay. So Ross comes over. He has a spare key to the house because it's his brother's house. He opens the door, he goes inside. He shouts to see if anyone's home in the parlor, but no one replies. He enters the guest bedroom to find Ina and Lena Stillinger's bodies on the bed in the guest bedroom. By bodies, I mean, they were bludgeoned to death. Ross screams to Mary, tells Mary to call the police instantly. She's calling the police. They come over quick. The police officer checked the entire house to find all of the Moores bludgeoned to death. The murder weapon was an axe belonging to Josiah Moore himself. It was found in the guest bedroom where the 2 young girl guests were staying. We are now over 100 years from this event, so we have a lot more information than they did back in the day. For one, we know that the killer or killers started in the master bedroom. The killer or killers used the blade on Sarah, but used the blunt end of the axe on the other victims. The children, Herman, Mary Catherine, Arthur, and Paul, were next bludgeoned in the head in the same manner as their parents. Afterwards, the murderer returned to the master bedroom to inflict more blows on the Moores, the parents, also knocking over a shoe that had filled with blood. Then the murderer moved on to the guest bedroom where they killed 2 of those young girls. In addition to the bodies of the young girls in the bedroom, I noted that the murder weapon, the axe, was also there, but next to the axe was a 4-pound slab of bacon. The investigators also found untouched food and bloody water during their search. This is the attic where the investigators thought that the murderer stayed in before killing the Moore family because they found cigarette butts here. Many possible suspects emerged from this murder. One suspect was Reverend George Kelly. Apparently, Reverend Kelly was a English-born traveling minister. He was in town the night of the murders, just coincidentally, right? He was described as peculiar, reportedly having suffered a mental breakdown as an adolescent. To be fair, I could see, like, if I was a suspect, okay, and then someone was like, oh yeah, I know her. She was a bit peculiar. I think she had a mental breakdown as a young adult. Like, duh, isn't that everyone? Like, but this is where he loses me, okay? Because as an adult, he was accused of peeping through windows, and several times asking young women and girls to pose nude for him. Ooh, bye. Reverend George Kelly. Reverend George Smelly, get out of here. On June 8th of 1912, he came to Villisca to teach the Children's Day services. So one day before the night that they had that program thing, yeah, that same night where they were murdered, yeah, he came to town one night before that. Odd, right? And he was like relevant to the Children's Day program. Creepy. He also left town between 5 a.m. and 5:50 a.m. on June 10th, aka that morning where the neighbor was like feeding the chickens or something for them. Eventually, Reverend Kelly actually confessed to the murders in court, but the jury did not believe his confession. So George Kelly was like free to go for a little bit, right? But then in 1914, 2 years after the murder happened, Kelly was arrested for sending obscene material through the mail. He was harassing a woman who applied for a job as his secretary via the mail. He was sent to a mental hospital after this, and then investigators looked into him again for the murder. In 1917, Kelly was actually arrested for the murder, but after 2 separate trials, he was acquitted. Other suspects in the investigation were also exonerated. This case is still unsolved. They still do not know truly who killed the Moores on that night in the Villisca Ax Murder House. So because of this murder, that's why so many people believe that the house is still haunted. The house is in Villisca, Iowa. It offers tours to the public, but you can also rent out either a room in the house or the whole house. Renting out the whole house is roughly $500 for the night, so if you do that, let me know. The house is also on the National Registry of Historic Places because historians and the owners actually restored the entire house to look exactly like the house would have looked like when the Moores were in it that fateful night. But now, is the Ax Murder House truly haunted? I went to Google and I wanted to see the reviews for myself. So here are just some of the reviews of the Villisca Ax Murder House. This was by far the most entertaining paranormal investigation our team has been on. We are still going through our footage and finding numerous EVPs. We had 2 members of our group that were physically touched, one so much that we ended up having to leave the house at around 2:30 in the morning. This place definitely has tons of paranormal activity and is a great place for starter paranormal investigators. You will be pleasantly surprised with all the activity in this house. Then they talk about how the tour guide was very personable, knowledgeable. We love you, John. Apparently you were really good at your job. Congratulations. I hope you get a promotion. And then they signed it with, P.S. We forgot to put the Monopoly game away. Sorry, we decided we weren't going back in. That's what they were worried about. Like, oh my God, we forgot to put the Monopoly board away. Like, who cares? Also, who's out here playing Monopoly? You're staying at one of the most haunted attractions in the United States and you're just playing Monopoly? Here is another review. A wild experience to say the least. My 3 friends and I had our first paranormal investigation here and we did not turn out empty-handed. Very, all caps, real experiences here that entail direct communication through spirit box and EMF reacting devices. Had some activity. The doll in the attic is creepy. My recommendation is to be nice to her. Think she is getting the power like Robert the doll. Obviously, the house is very somber, but not necessarily negative unless you stir things up. If you are a paranormal investigator, definitely a must. So there you have it. Those are just 3 of the many, like 900 and something Google reviews of the Villisca Ax Murder House. Please comment down below if you've ever heard of the Villisca Ax Murder House. Maybe you've even been there. Maybe it's on your to-do list. I don't know why you would go to, where is it? Oh, Iowa? I don't even know where Iowa is, let alone am I going to go to visit it. No offense if you live in Iowa. Wait, was it Iowa? I forgot that was a state. That's so embarrassing. If you like this video at least a little bit, make sure to give it a like. That really helps. Subscribe to the channel for more paranormal videos. I also live stream basically every single day because I have nothing to do with my life. So like and comment and subscribe would mean a lot. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time on Cauldron Convos. Bye.